The cabin lights glowed softly as passengers boarded the aircraft, the warm ambience of the plane wrapping around them like a blanket. People moved with quiet purpose, storing bags, finding seats, buckling in. But the peaceful rhythm broke sharply when a sudden irritated voice sliced the air. Heads instinctively turned. A well-dressed businessman stood in the aisle, towering over a woman seated calmly at the window. His tone carried sharpness and ego, instantly shifting the cabin atmosphere. Passengers froze mid-motion, sensing that this wasn't just a minor disagreement, but the beginning of something larger. The woman remained composed as the businessman demanded she vacate the seat immediately. His entitlement was unmistakable, chin raised, arms stiff, as if he expected compliance without question. A few passengers exchanged glances, others heavily lifted their phones, anticipating drama. The woman didn't raise her voice. She simply looked back at him, startled but steady. This wasn't just someone being rude. This was a clash of values, and although no one knew it yet, this seat carried a history deeper than anyone imagined. A flight attendant hurried toward the commotion, her steps quick but expression controlled. She attempted to calm the situation, but the businessman's agitation rose instead. His voice grew louder, filling the cabin until even the cockpit door cracked open. That alone sent a ripple of unease through passengers. Pilots didn't leave the cockpit during boarding unless absolutely necessary. Within moments, the pilot himself stepped out. The cabin instantly hushed. Curiosity and tension braided together in the air. The pilot walked slowly down the aisle, his presence calm yet authoritative. He reached the row and glanced between the businessman, the woman, and the attendants trying to mediate. Without waiting for full explanation, he addressed the woman directly. "Ma'am, I need you to switch seats." Right now, the statement dropped like a stone in water. A few passengers gasped. The businessman leaned back smugly, convinced the pilot had validated his complaint. But the woman, stunned, stared up with disbelief. This wasn't just an instruction. It felt like a dismissal of something sacred. Before the confrontation erupted, she had boarded with a quiet grace, no chaos, no hurry. She carried only a laptop bag and a simple necklace she unconsciously touched for comfort. This wasn't a leisure trip. She wasn't dressed for vacation. She had come with purpose and emotional weight. The significance of her seat, the exact one she booked months ago, was tied to a memory she was not ready to let go of. And the idea of giving it up felt like letting a piece of her father slip away. She had walked through the cabin slowly, scanning seat numbers until she reached 14A, the window seat on the left side. She paused before sitting, exhaled deeply, and lowered herself into the seat with the tenderness of someone stepping into a memory rather than a journey. Outside, tarmac lights shimmered against the dark sky, highlighting the emotional storm she kept inside. This seat wasn't random. It was chosen for a reason she hadn't shared with anyone yet. Today marked a deeply personal anniversary, the day her father passed away. Since childhood, they had flown together often, always choosing the left side window for the sunrise view. They believed the world looked different when welcomed by the light first thing in the morning. Even after his death, she honored their tradition. And today, as she traveled to deliver a speech dedicated to him, she needed the sunrise more than ever. It wasn't just a window seat, it was a connection to him. As she settled in, she whispered softly, "You'd be proud of me today." She planned to spend the flight in quiet reflection before the emotional event awaiting her. But suddenly, the moment shattered when the businessman arrived late, dragging his briefcase loudly and exuding frustration. Without really checking, he insisted she was in his seat. She calmly showed him her boarding pass, but he dismissed her explanation, leaning heavily on his priority status. His voice grew louder, carrying through the cabin, causing passengers to pause and observe. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he snapped. The woman remained polite but firm. She wasn't refusing out of stubbornness. She was protecting something emotionally important. But from his tone, it was clear he didn't care about her reasons. He only cared about what he wanted. Instead of seeking clarification, he escalated the confrontation by slamming his briefcase onto the empty seat and aggressively pressing the call button. "We're not doing this," he muttered loudly. A flight attendant approached, already sensing the conflict would not be easy to diffuse. She listened to him complain, but his exaggerated frustration overshadowed the woman's calm explanation. The attendant reviewed both boarding passes and gently asked the woman if she could switch to the aisle seat, just to keep things simple. For a moment, she considered avoiding the conflict, but then her father's memory tugged at her heart. This seat was chosen with purpose, and she knew she couldn't surrender it without losing something deeply personal. So she said softly, "I really need to keep this seat." The businessman scoffed loudly, tossing his hands up as if she were being irrational. "It's just a window," he barked, echoing through the cabin. But to her, it wasn't just a window. It was her ritual, her goodbye, her strength. Meanwhile, boarding had slowed, passengers grew restless, and the attendant's worry increased. One attendant quietly approached the cockpit. Moments later, the pilot stepped into the aisle, moving with an authority that quieted the entire aircraft. He reached their row and asked what was happening. The businessman immediately took charge of the narrative, painting himself as the victim and pushing blame onto the woman. Passengers watched closely, waiting for justice or disappointment. The pilot turned to the woman, who felt dozens of eyes pressing on her. "This is my assigned seat," she said softly. "I'm not comfortable moving." The pilot, balancing time pressure and cabin tension, asked her again to switch so the flight could depart. The businessman smirked, assuming victory. But inside the woman, a shift occurred. Her father's voice echoed, "Never be afraid to claim your place, even if someone tries to push you out of it." She took a calm, steady breath. This was more than a disagreement. It was a moment to honor him. Slowly she stood. Not to leave, but to speak. Her voice was soft but resolute. She explained the significance of the seat, the anniversary, the sunrise, and the speech she was traveling to give. The cabin, once noisy, fell into complete silence. Even those who had sided with the businessman began to reconsider. The businessman rolled his eyes, but passengers now understood. This woman wasn't refusing out of pride, she was holding onto a memory. The pilot listened attentively, empathy replacing his earlier firmness. He turned to the businessman and asked what seat he had actually booked. When the attendant checked the boarding pass and revealed 14C aisle, collective awareness spread through the plane. The businessman faltered, trying to justify himself, but the pilot raised his hand with calm authority. "Sir, you may take your assigned seat, or we'll discuss removing you from this flight." The businessman froze, humiliated. Passengers nodded subtly, supporting the pilot's decision. Reluctantly, he dropped into the aisle seat, his earlier arrogance replaced with quiet embarrassment. The woman exhaled gently, relieved but still processing the emotional storm. As the plane ascended, the world outside her window transformed from deep night to a breathtaking wash of orange and gold. She leaned her forehead softly against the cool window, tears gathering as the sunrise unfolded exactly how she needed it to. She whispered, "Some seats. You just don't give up." In that moment, she felt her father beside her. When the plane landed, she gathered her things slowly. Passengers gave her respectful nods as she walked past. She didn't need applause. The real victory had been keeping her dignity and honoring her father's memory. Outside the terminal, sunlight bathed her in warmth. With a small smile, she whispered, "Thank you, Dad," and walked forward stronger, braver, and ready to give the speech she had flown here to deliver.